For almost 2 decades, Andrea Horwath worked at Queen's Park, mostly criticizing governments for not doing what she thought they ought to be doing. But now, Horwath is the mayor of Hamilton, and for the first time in a very long time, is now responsible for implementing an agenda. Let's find out how that's going. In the home of the Tiger Cats, here's Mayor Andrea Horwath coming to us from her office at Hamilton City Hall. And your worship, it's good to see you again. How are you?
It is my pleasure, and I'm doing great. And Oski wee wee.
Amen to that. Amen to that. When you were at Queen's Park in opposition, they called you the Steeltown Scrapper. Sometimes government members called you worse than that. But in any event, how'd you react the first time somebody looked at you and said, "Hello, Your Worship"?
It was something. It still is something to have that moniker. First of all, it's very, very formal, but yeah, it gives me a moment to pause almost every time I hear it. Am I thrilled? Absolutely. Is it still the case, though, coming back after 18 years at the legislature? They should have listened to me. It would have made my job as mayor a lot easier had those governments listened to me when I was criticizing them or offering them solutions.
Well, getting back to my intro, I guess you tell me, is the mindset different now because your job is no longer to go to work every day and oppose the government's agenda of the day, but rather to implement an agenda of your own that you campaigned on and now are responsible for implementing?
Yeah, it's actually exciting. It is something to have to really be the criticizer of everything and never the implementer in opposition. And as third party, that was tough. As official opposition, it was really important work all the way along. But being in a position now to not only implement my agenda, but to work with the city council. We have a lot of very progressive city councilors that were elected to our council, lots of really committed people around climate, around housing, around how the health and well-being of our community overall, downtown, transportation, mass transit, all of these things. It's quite exciting. And seeing, really, Steve, when I left City Hall back in 2004. I had served for 7 years in the downtown, never having seen a crane, not only in those 7 years, but probably for the 20 or 30 years prior to that. And now I can look out my office in any direction and I can see cranes in the sky. So Hamilton is changing rapidly, and it's exciting, but it also brings challenges. We want to build strong communities, not just buildings. Some folks call them boxes in the sky. We don't need that. We need communities. But it is exciting to see Hamilton transforming and being able to be a part of it.
Well, if people were looking for evidence of the change in your relationship with the Premier of Ontario, they didn't have to go too far. It was a few months ago that he came to Hamilton. You two did an announcement together. And, why don't we let the tape tell the tale? Sheldon, if you would, let's roll this clip.
I also want to welcome Mayor Horwath, who I'm thrilled to be standing with instead of standing across the aisle from her.
Now, you got to explain to us how, after basically 4 years of trying to carve that guy a new one every day, suddenly you two are all smiles there. How does that happen?
Well, you know what? It's as I said during the campaign, actually, and it's the truth. I mean, we all have a job to do, and in the legislature, I had a job to do, and at first, I think perhaps it caught the premier when he was newly elected unawares at how hardball I had to be, because that was my job. But he began, I think, eventually to understand that it was my job. And then, of course, then when I became the mayor, our first conversation, it was actually at that announcement. We had a good laugh about it. Really, he said, I came in all hot, and you had been there a long time, so you knew what you were doing. And then he said, he's learned a lot. He said he's learned a lot over the last couple of years, and then with his new mandate, looking forward to working with myself as well as mayors around the province to to bring change to communities, particularly, of course, as you know, the housing agenda is a big one for them. But it's not just been the premier. I've had really great conversations and discussions with most of the cabinet ministers, including Neil Lumsden, who I served with on a committee back in the day when I was on city council with the cycling championship. So we go a long way back. But it really is about putting aside, from my perspective now, putting aside the partisanship and finding ways to partner, and that's what I'm committed to doing. And so whether it's with Minister Clark, who I met yesterday, who I spoke to, and who I text with from time to time about housing, whether it's with the premier about investments, Minister Fedeli around economic development, it's been very, very positive, and we talk about the things that we can do together, and I don't rip them one anymore. That's somebody else's job now.
Well, okay, I want to see if I can peel the curtain back a little bit more and see how that works, because it would be understandable, after 4 years of taking barbs from you across the floor and frankly giving back against you as well, it would be perfectly normal for you to win your election as mayor and for them to say, we're going to do everything in our power to screw her over because she made our life so difficult for the last 4 years. I really need a better understanding of why you think that's not happening.
Well, I think that's a question that needs to be asked of the premier, frankly. But I think that he's. I mean, it's all about politics, I guess. And look, he's got a couple of MPPs here in the Hamilton area, with Minister Lumsden and with MPP Skelly.
Yep.
Yeah, MPP Skelly. And so I think that he realizes that some of his own members are representatives of this city, and if we can find the ways to work together to move things forward for all of Hamilton, that benefits Hamiltonians. And he's got members of his caucus that are representing Hamiltonians, and so we do have some common ground there.
Okay, I do want to ask you about how strong a mayor you intend to be, and by that I mean the mayor of Toronto, the next one, whoever it is, when elected in June, will have so-called strong mayor powers. The mayor of Ottawa, in legislation, has strong mayor powers. Says he isn't going to use them, but he has them. Do you want them?
Well, I mean, I think this is something that is really important to watch now over the next little while. I said during the campaign, and I believe that the best way to get to decisions in an appropriate way is to bring people together. And that's kind of my history. I was a community development worker, community development coordinator for a legal clinic before I even got elected. It was all about bringing people together, finding common ground, finding a way forward. And when I think about our city council, that's what we're trying to do. Are there disagreements? Absolutely. Are there times when we have a hard and fast vote where it's almost split down the middle? Absolutely. But far, far more often we have votes that are completely unanimous, and I think that's the appropriate way to govern, to find the way forward where we can get people behind something that will improve our city, or that responds to a concern that the residents of our city have, and that's the way I've always operated. And I mean, certainly as an opposition leader, I get it. That's not exactly the same kind of a role, but that's exactly what I hope to continue to do. It's worked so far. I can't see why it wouldn't work going forward. And there are some tough issues that we need to address. But
no, I get you.
I'm confident.
I get you, but I want to press you a little bit on this, because if Doug Ford comes to you and says, look, I'm taking a second look at this for a lot of big cities around the province. The mayor of Mississauga wants it. The mayor of wherever wants it. If I offer it to you, Andrea, do you want it? What would you say to the premier under those circumstances?
Well, I would basically say I don't need it. I don't think that I need it at this point. But again, I don't think that we've seen enough yet as to how these other cities are going to manage. I know that the mayor of Ottawa is frankly brand new, has never served before as a mayor, and we'll see what happens with the by-election in Toronto. But at this point, I don't know that I need those powers. Is there some benefit to them? I think the proof will be in the pudding, and that's why it was smart, I think, for the premier test drive it in a couple of municipalities.
Gotcha. Okay, there is an LRT that will allegedly be built in our city. I say our because I'm from there, as you know, to the tune of more than $1 billion. And I'm not sure anybody I've talked to yet knows when it's actually going to be done. Do you know?
Yeah. Yeah, well, absolutely. The Metrolinx is actually setting up an office this summer in the downtown at the Connaught. We are in the process right now. We've just passed our budget, and embedded within that budget are some public works that are happening underground, moving some water mains and those kinds of things to make sure we still have the volumes that we need, but moving them away from where, the route, if you will, where the LRT is going to be. Those works although they're in our budget, they will be covered off by the Metrolinx dollars, including all of the actual hard infrastructure, but the staff time as well. So really, it's already starting, and shovels in the ground. It hopefully before the end of next year, but certainly by 2025, there will be shovels in the ground, and will be under construction. Right now, Metrolinx in the process of building, buying up some more properties, and yeah, it's full steam ahead.
Okay, let me ask you about something that I know you've been asked about this a lot in the past, but we haven't had a chance to talk about it on this program. And I must confess that, with many cities around this province having elected their first female mayors decades ago in some cases, it's kind of shocking to me that you are the first female mayor in Hamilton history. And I wonder whether that achievement matters to you.
I think, you know what, I think it does. I feel proud of it. All through my political life, I've had mums and particularly mums and grandmas and aunts tell me about how their daughters have watched my political career, and how they talk about me to their daughters or to their nieces or to their granddaughters, and it gives them a great sense of hope when they see that their female children or grandchildren, etc., are able to see a role model in a position that, in past centuries and decades hasn't been the case. And that makes me feel good, actually. And I feel positive about that. And so when people say you're the first female mayor of Hamilton, how does that make you feel? I feel darn proud, but it also comes with a great deal of responsibility and thoughtfulness, not only around the role that I play in terms of, building this city in a sustainable, whole of community kind of way, but that the work that I do is also being a role model for younger women and girls, and being a voice, being a woman's voice, that other women and girls can look to as a beacon towards what they can achieve.
All right, in our last 30 seconds, I want to come full circle here and take you back to the very first thing you said to me when we started this conversation, and those words were Oskee wee wee. The Hamilton Tiger Cats have not won the Grey Cup since 1999, and I want to know what the mayor of Hamilton plans to do about that.
Well, I'll be there cheering in the stands as always and pushing really hard. Look, we have such a great, not only team, but such a great team spirit, such a great fan base here in Hamilton. And even, expats like yourself still come to the games and cheer on the Cats. And so I'm really looking forward to the season. And and I'll be
Mayor
there
Horwath, if cheering alone would have got it done, we would have done it years ago. I don't know what the heck it's going to take. So I'm tasking you with this responsibility. Okay?
Okay, well, being a longtime politician, I can't make that promise because I don't know that I can actually be the one that'll have it go over the finish line, but I'm with you on it.
All right. Oskee wee wee indeed. That's Andrea Horwath, the mayor of Hamilton. We're grateful for your time on TVO tonight. Many thanks.
My pleasure as always, Steve. Take care.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.